Going to talk a little bit about intensity, volume, and frequency when it comes to weights training. So whenever I'm planning a training block, so let's say I'm just going to do like, I don't know, say like an 8-week training, what I'm aiming to do is progress over time. But that block is part of a bigger block, is part of an overall goal. But just to simplify things, to give you an idea of how I plan everything, I'm just going to start with that initial 8 weeks. So in that time, I might have a goal to improve my total training performance or work output in that time, or my goal might just be to maintain if I'm in like a significant calorie deficit. So, but let's just assume that I am trying to progress. So the things that I'm trying to progress with is intensity, and that can be in terms of how much weight is on the bar or how much weight is on a given machine, total mechanical stress, or it can also be just keeping the weight the same and doing more reps at a given weight or more time under tension, or adding in, sometimes I'll add in drop sets, supersets, and some of the other things. And some of these techniques I feel can be really useful, particularly if you're having trouble with like an injury or something like that, where you can't just keep going up in weight and you can't just throw plates and plates on the edge and just keep building up. If you've got a shoulder problem and your joints can't actually take that much load, it might be a smarter idea to taper back the weight, focus more on time under tension, and focus on the intensity that way. But either way, you want to try and progress over that 8-week block. And then also you want to progress in the total amount of volume, which is basically just how much work are you doing in the gym, like reps by sets by the weight kind of thing. So how much total work volume are you actually doing? And it's not always going to be completely linear, and particularly because volume is inversely proportional to intensity. So what I mean by that is basically the more volume you do, the lower the average intensity is going to be per set. And to use a very simple example of this, imagine say like a 100-meter sprinter versus a marathon runner. So if you're running a 100-meter sprint, you can go a lot faster in that 100 meters versus the pace you have to hold for say, an entire marathon. And the same is true with like the total amount of sets and the total amount of volume you do in a workout. So if you're training and you're in there on the same exercise, doing for a couple hours, just training that same muscle group, after a while, the intensity per set is just going to drop right down due to fatigue. That's assuming that you're training at a pretty high intensity close to failure. If you're just doing sub-max training, well then, you could probably maintain throughout that whole session, but then you're probably not training intense enough to really stimulate the muscle for growth anyway, so that's not optimal. So this is one of the reasons that I like to have a frequency of training of at least 2 times per week. So let's say that I'm going to be doing, 20 sets on chest throughout the week. I might do say, let's just very simplify things and say I'm just going to do all those 20 sets on bench press. I probably wouldn't, but just to use an example of how I'd plan this and to demonstrate what I'm talking about, let's say I did all 20 sets on Monday. Now, after the first 10 sets, I'm going to be performing reasonably well. But then if I just keep going for the second set of 10 sets, then my performance is just going to dip down. And I've actually tried this as well. So what I did was I set a weight at 100 kilo bench press and just tried to, maintain consistent sets of 12 to 15 reps throughout the first. I did it consistently for the first, say, 8 sets, I think. And then after that, it just dropped down to around 6 reps and then 4 reps. And then I was, by about the 14th, 15th set, I was doing like sets of 3. So you can see that after a certain point, the accumulated fatigue just gets so high that even though you're staying in and doing all this extra work, what you're actually getting in terms of the return for the work you're putting in is far, far less. So I find it a lot more practical to say, well, hang on, if I'm going to do this much total work throughout the week, why not just do 10 sets at the start of the week and do the other 10 sets over here on, say, like a Thursday or a Friday kind of thing. And then even with that, I'll still modulate that intensity a little bit, because if I really burn myself out on, say, Monday, by the time I get back to doing it again on Thursday, I'll probably still have some fatigue, still have some soreness. So I might not be able to perform as well as I would on Monday, but I can still perform reasonably well and achieve better results than if I were to just do that all in one go. And so how many sets would you normally do throughout the week? Well, it kind of depends on your starting point. So anywhere from say 10 to 15 to start, and you can build up the volume to doing 20 sets per body part, and then I'll split that throughout the week. And I'm just going to quickly talk about bro splits and if I use them as well, because I don't want this video to go too long. But sometimes I find that they can be quite practical, but normally I think a frequency of twice per week is generally going to be better than one. But there is an instance where I would actually use them. So when I was doing double sessions, sometimes I do chest and just really isolate the chest in the morning. I might come back in the evening and then I'll train arms. And then the next day I might train back in the morning and I'll come back and do calves and abs in the evening. And then the next day I might do legs. So if I'm doing doubles, then it might be more practical to really split those body parts up a lot further and only train one body part at the time. But I feel like if you're just an average guy and you're training, say 4 to 5 days a week, and you've got a regular day job and all this sort of stuff, and you're not devoting, 2 or 3 hours a day to training, then it's going to be more practical to split your program up that has a frequency of training each body part at least twice per week, because again, you're going to get higher average intensity per set by splitting that volume. And other than that, you're probably just going to be burning more total calories because you're just working those body parts more frequently and getting full body workouts in more often. And you generally will see greater improvements in strength gains as well because of the higher frequency per body part. So I think it's more practical for most people, but I feel like in some circumstances, where if you've been training for a very, very long period of time and you need a lot of sets at a very high intensity to stimulate that muscle, you might switch it up a little bit. But yeah, that's basically some of the fundamentals. I could talk about all this stuff, but if you have any other questions, just send me a message. And yeah, that's training.